Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. As usual, I'll be giving just 1 minute to allow you guys to comment before we start the business of the day. Sorry, we had some technical issues. That's why we are starting, I think, 1 minute uh, behind our usual time. Okay, like I said 1 minute ago, good afternoon once again. I guess I will just take it up from here, allow you guys to come in. Good afternoon once again for those of you guys that are joining us for the first time. My name is Gagba Esehaya, and I'm the training coordinator of the Temple Small Business Development Center. The Temple Small Business Development Center helps small businesses start and grow. We offer free one-on-one consulting and a variety of low to low-cost webinars. We are part of the nationally accredited network of the Small Business Development Centers, which has over 1,000 networks across the United States. You're here this afternoon for a webinar on Let's Get Users to Your Website. A copy of the PowerPoint and the link to the recording will be sent to all the attendees. Being a webinar, all the attendees have been muted. However, we always encourage you guys to drop your questions on the Q&A or the chat box. Without further ado, please allow me to welcome my wonderful speaker, even as she takes over the floor for the presentation. Jane, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, guys. I'm Jane Clark from Brand Swan, and today we're going to be talking about SEO and getting traffic to your website, and I happen to be very good at this. I mean, I guess you'd hope so. If you've been to one of my webinars before, let me know in the chat. I'm excited to see you again, and new people, welcome. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Brand Swan. I've been a business owner for over 14 years. I actually started as a front-end web developer, designing since the 90s, I kid you not, and I specialize in brand strategy, web design, and SEO. And for Harry Potter fans out there, I am a Ravenclaw. So what are you going to learn today? You're going to learn how to utilize SEO to get users to your website. You're going to learn how to write content that's optimized for the search engines and how to recognize keywords people are actually using to search for you. So in a nutshell, what is SEO and how can I use it? So you have a website, now what? And the number one thing is, don't forget to invite people to the party. So search engine optimization, which is why we call it SEO, is really just helping the search engines connect you with your audience, the people that need your services, the people looking for information. It lets you let people know that your website exists. So the way the SEO model is you have SEO. Well, let's start with website traffic. So basically the goal is website traffic, and there are a few different ways to get there. One, you can do SEO on page, which is sort of writing content, which we're going to go over. Manual sharing, which we're going to go over. And this is ways that you would tell your perhaps existing clients about your website. Perhaps you send out an email newsletter or share a link. That would be an example of manual sharing. And off-page SEO, what you can do to increase those rankings. And the interesting thing about SEO is I like to describe it as kind of like a point system, and some points are worth more than others. So you might be able to tick several of the boxes, but unless you have the major ones covered, you might not see the results that you're looking for. So here are the non-SEO ways to share your website. And whenever you create an ad or, business card, you always want to share your website on it, especially in today's digital age, right? Who here calls a business without looking at their website? I want honest answers. Who here would just call someone without looking them up first? Would anyone? And perhaps it depends on the industry, but if it was a roofer, would you just call them up without doing research? Always check the website, yeah, for sure. Even if it's not their website, perhaps it's just Google reviews. Yeah, you should always check. So in addition to business cards and all that stuff, you want to put your website on ads, business cards, service brochures, flyers, posters. And guys, the best part about this is that, it would tie into a call to action. So you wouldn't just put your website necessarily on the bottom, but you might say, go here for a free download, or go here for, tips on how to keep your roof looking new, whatever. So, if you entice them to go there for a reason, you're going to get a lot more clicks on that website. Of course, there are other mediums like TV, radio, speaking, contests, and of course, last but never least, email, social media, and online platforms. So these are all ways you can share your website with the world that don't have anything to do with social media, or I'm sorry, SEO. Okay, so on-page SEO is really what I specialize in, and I call it organic SEO. And what that means is that your content is king. Your content is really what drives the traffic. And don't think of SEO like in the 90s, where it was almost like you were somehow hacking the search engines for your website to come up #1. Google, surprisingly not, is smarter than you are. So they know when you're trying to trick them, and they will penalize you for that. So really what SEO is all about is just helping Google find the best fit for your website. And there's lots of options that you can do in order to achieve that. So here's what Google's looking for. And some of these would surprise you on how you would rank. So first one, I put security. That means that the website has an SSL certificate. When your website has an SSL certificate, Google says, oh, well, that's a secure website, and it gives it preference over other sites that don't have an SSL installed. Now, nowadays, people know that, and there's lots of SSLs, but if you're in an industry, maybe that's slow changing, perhaps, you've been in the industry for 30 years and haven't really updated your website, getting an SSL could help you raise the ranks. So that's a big one. Usability. Google looks for that. So let's say you're on a mobile and the links are so close together, like your finger can't select it. Google's going to know that, and it's going to send you an alert. It's going to say, hey, there's a usability issue here. Speed, super important. Now, like I said, some points are worth more than others, and I'm finding speed is becoming higher up on the scale. So, for example, I hit all the points. My SEO is bright green, but because my website is animated, it's running scripts, it's doing things, it's not going to come up as high as a website that does check all the points, but has a faster site. So really, you just have to kind of figure out your industry and what it needs. So if you're not in a design or photo heavy industry, you might not need to do all this cool stuff, these bells and whistles. So something to keep in mind. And there are tools I'm going to include in this presentation, guys, where you can check the speed of your website. Now, does anyone here use WordPress and Divi? Anyone here use WordPress and Divi? I will tell you that Divi drags down your website like no one else. It's so cool. It's one of the best themes ever, but it's also in the lowest performance ones. So be aware that that's going to be an issue for you. And especially the more plugins you have. If you have a crap ton of plugins, and let's say you have plugin scripts running on pages where the plugin isn't actually at, that's slowing down your site overall. So there are things you can do where you can isolate, like let's say, okay, I have a directory. Well, I'm just going to put the directory script on the directory pages instead of just popping into the head of the document and having it be on every single page. So there are some things you can do with a cool site, but it's a bit more technically involved. Number 4 is it responsive? If it's not responsive, Google's going to think that website was made 13 or 30 years ago. 13 isn't that long ago, actually. And you're just going to fall off the search engines, especially if you have a super competitive industry. Optimizing page content. This is the organic SEO. This is where it's very formulaic, and I'm going to show you what the formula is, but they want to see the key phrase in very certain places coded a certain way, and that's how they know that you're legit about this topic. Meta descriptions. This is quite important. This lets the search engines know what your website is about. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And you can do that in WordPress very easily. Alt text on images. So describe your images, and not just to help those who perhaps can't see. It will read it to them what that image looks like, but also you can stuff some keywords in there that are relevant. You don't want it to be like overly keywordy, but you can definitely have an opportunity to do the images, and really just provides another avenue of search. So if you're in the Google images and you tag something like Delaware web design, our portfolio is going to come up on that. So that just allows another avenue of search. Last but not least, I hate this so much, but it's becoming more and more important in the scores, the readability score or the flash test. I hate it. I do. I'm going to be honest with you, because it's graded very, the green, the good, when you've matched, it kind of grades you. It's like, okay, well, you have an A on this. It wants you to kind of write text an 11-year-old can read. And I'm like, I refuse to believe that my audience cannot read this text. So, it might penalize you for that if you don't use very simple sentences, active voice. There's a whole thing about it. And you can decide, how important that is to you. And it might just be unavoidable because of your audience, at which point your competitors probably have the same problem, and therefore it's not really a playing field problem. I hope that makes sense. So, did you know that the age of your URL and the URL itself matters? What does that mean? That means if your website's been around for 10 years, Google's like, dude, that business is so old, it's hanging in there. Like, it's definitely an authority in the industry. And as far as the URL, here's an example. So there's a company who does tattoos, and they're called the Delaware Branding Company. Because their name of their company and the URL is delawarebranding.com, they come up really high because they have the name of the key phrase in their name and they have it in their URL. So that absolutely matters. So I had to beat them, and I did. I'm slightly competitive. I finally did, and I'm happy. But yeah, so our challenge was that, we just had a new domain name. We just bought it 2 years ago, and so it had to kind of build reputation. Okay, so we kind of went over what the search engines are looking for. But here's some things to check for, because if you have issues, Google will penalize you for it. And also, you'll lose the lead. So if images and content aren't loading properly, that can still steer people away. If you have broken links that go nowhere, they'll leave. Make sure that people can navigate through the site easily without having to hit back 4 times. You don't want any orphaned page content. And what's an orphaned page content? An orphaned page means it's not linked anywhere on the website, so no one can actually get there through the navigation process. So that might be intentional. So perhaps it's a download page that you only want people to access if they fill out their name and email, then that's okay. Otherwise, there shouldn't be any orphan pages. You want to make sure that they're linked so people can actually get there. There's a resource here which will check your website for broken links, and then you can manually update or repair them. If you use Yoast, you can, and let's say the page no longer exists, you can redirect that URL, for example, to actual content. And this is actually really interesting, because a single broken link can impact your search engine rankings, the user's experience, and result in a loss of customers. Of course, that means revenue, and in worst cases, all of the above. So, you have a first impression, and that really matters. So moving on to the page speed. This is a big problem, especially for, again, Divi users. So realistically, as fast as internet is these days, you have 2 or 3 seconds before users just give up and go back and pick a different site. 2 to 3 seconds. They don't wait that long. And this is a bounce rate, and Google takes this into account when it ranks your site. You can absolutely check your page speed. You're going to be blown away if you have a WordPress site how slow your site is, especially if you're using a really intensive word builder like Divi. There are some things you can can fix, and it'll kind of go through that with you. One of them is that your hosting package just doesn't have enough resources, especially if you're using Divi. It's very resource intensive to do all that cool stuff. So if it's really sluggish in the back end and you're struggling to do things, you probably need to switch your host or increase it if they offer that package. Number two is check your image sizes. If you just upload it right off your camera, they can be up to 4,000 pixels or higher. And that's going to take a long time to load, especially on a mobile. So you want to make sure that you resize your images. Now, I believe WordPress added something where it automatically reduces your images to a maximum of 2,500 pixels, but it also can compress them, and therefore the quality might be lost. So you really might want to do it yourself. It depends. WordPress plugins can definitely help with caching and image compression. So if you have a lot of images, but you don't care so much about the quality of them, you can compress them so they're a much smaller file size. And this speed page insight will definitely give you a list of issues that you can start addressing right away to increase your score. So this is just some ways that you can kind of double check your speed and make sure that that's not an issue for your site. I know for a fact it's an issue on my site, but I'm aware of it. Okay, so 40% of consumers will wait no more than 3 seconds before abandoning a site. Keep that in mind. This is the big one. It really is that fast. Okay, so we talked a little bit about mobile, but not entirely. Mobile traffic has surpassed desktop for the amount of time that people spend browsing the internet. So keep that in mind. Mobile traffic, they have the most time. So people are on their phones longer than they are on the desktop. Now, again, you really have to consider your data because there are industry differences, you know, and you have to take a look at your analytics, and you might find that you have mostly desktop users who buy our products or mobile. And you just have to kind of finesse your experience and your website experience based on that. So if you know people are on their mobile phones, you know you can really scale down those images. You probably don't even need them in there that much. And then as they get bigger, you know, the pictures can pop in. You can actually do that. You can actually show smaller images for responsive mobile sites and then bigger images for desktop, all in code. It's very cool. So yes, also you might want to turn off any like animations and things that are moving around on mobile so it doesn't load those scripts, because that can really be taxing on a mobile phone, especially if they don't have a big signal. Their pages never loads and then they're gone. So again, check that out. You're going to get a lot of lists of things you can start addressing right now. And some of them are quite easy. Others are a bit more complex, but you can call me if you need to when you get to the complex part. So in a 2018 study, mobile devices accounted for 58% of site visits. Massive, right? That number isn't quite different for 2019, but yeah. All right, I want to take some questions. It looks like I got some. I'm going to start the Q&A first. Tina says, you said if the WordPress site is slow, we may need to switch the host. How do we know how much bandwidth is needed to be fast enough? Is there a certain number that's great, good, or mediocre? The best way to test it is, you know, when you get feedback from people saying, hey, I can't log in, it's not loading for me. They might say things like, I sent in a form and you're like, I never got it. The biggest indicator is if you're in the back end doing things and it's taking forever, things are breaking, it's acting really strange. Typically what that means is that your web server is just maxed out on memory and CPU and all sorts of stuff. So if your site isn't fast, then it's not fast enough. I should probably say. There isn't really a number to hit because it depends on the complexity of your website and what you got going on. But if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. If you have no complaints, then don't try to fix something that's not broken. But yeah, check that speed test and see if that gives you any insight. Hope that helps, Tina. Small Biz Philly, hey. He says, how to install directory listings without slowing down website. That's interesting. I had this, I feel like I had this conversation today, but maybe I think I might have mentioned it like as an example like a few minutes ago. So what we do for our directory is that you can isolate those scripts and put it just on the directory pages. So that way you're not slowing down the rest of the website. So there is, for WordPress, you can definitely get like header plugins that will allow you to really segregate those scripts for those pages. So you don't have to, again, bear the burden of everything on every page. So that's how I would address that. I hope that helps. Okay. Done. Perla asks, how do you add meta descriptions on WordPress? Well, typically you can add it under the general settings. There's like a title of your website that can come up in the search engines. Most themes that you install have a section called SEO where you can fill out that information, as well as on the page itself. If you scroll to the bottom, you're going to see title, meta, you're going to see some stuff there. If you don't, then you can install a plugin called Yoast that, and there is a free version where you can fill that out a bit, because there should be a meta description for each page. Okay, because I'm getting so many questions, let's go ahead and keep all the questions to the Q&A, but I'm gonna go ahead and go back and just read a couple here. Hiroyo, I remember you. How about using your name for the domain name? Is that a bad idea? I think it depends on your business and what your brand is. So if you are your brand, then definitely get your name. I can't, I unfortunately cannot get Jane Clark. It's too common. But yeah, if you have a name, you can get it. You know, it's $12 a year, so that could be cool. And again, that kind of goes back to branding. You know, who are you without your company? Is it separate? For example, I bet you Jeff Bezos has a separate website or a separate like page, separate from Amazon. You know, hopefully something other than Wikipedia. Okay, Rick asks, how does domain age goodness change when you don't update often? Well, I don't know how much it offsets it. So if your domain name's been around for 20 years, but you haven't touched it in 20 years, then you're going to fall out the rankings because that just looks like stale old content that's been abandoned. Now, word often, I would update at least once a month, and a good way to keep it going is to add blogs and fresh content there. And the cool thing is that you can add the content, it will cross post to other platforms. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. So just think of a content strategy, and that'll keep your website fresh enough that Google doesn't penalize you because it's too old. One way you can do it is by having a dynamic blog module on our homepage that automatically updates when new blogs are posted. So then that's changing too. Regina, this might not be relevant for today. What if the company name is very long? Should the domain name be abbreviated because the name is long? And it will be, yeah. Okay, so think of it this way. If you have a super long domain name, think of your email address. So for brand protection, you could get a company email address. I have a book in front of me called The 20,000 Secrets of Tea. Now, if it was a 20,000 Secrets of Tea, you can't start a domain name with a number, by the way, then it would be super long, right? So what you might end up doing is abbreviating it, such as like 20K of T or something like that, .com. That's completely normal. And then that would just be on your marketing. But if someone did type in your name.com, they would get there. But I would definitely vie for a shorter domain name because it's going to look way better on all your marketing materials. Yeah, try to abbreviate when possible. Yes, you'll get the slides. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Phil, what's controversy? Let me know what controversy you're talking about. I missed that one. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, if they are stuff with keywords, you know, It can be good. I will, however, tell you one thing. I had a little bit of a story, but I was doing SEO for someone, and this person bought like 30 domain names and said, this will increase my SEO, right? And all those domains he bought were keyword heavy. So I told him, well, no. So just buying the domains and forwarding them to the pages isn't enough to really affect your SEO. There has to be more of a strategy with that. So just be careful. I mean, domains are really for brand protection. I feel like you don't need 30 million domain names. However, I will tell you one thing. If you decide to let a domain go, make sure you're cool with it being gone for good, because what will happen is someone will buy it from you, or they'll buy it and then try to resell it to you for lots of money. So don't have any regrets on if you want that domain name back. So just be sure. But yeah, I mean, they do rank well. You know, if someone types in, you know, Delaware website designer, DelawareWebsiteDesigner.com is going to rank near the top, so long as it checks off a couple other items. So yeah, there is a character limit at some point. I just don't know. I'd have to look that up. Okay. Yeah. Phil, how do you feel about the dash? I don't feel like people would type that in naturally, but I believe the dash does help for SEO purposes. But I think it's pretty ugly. Yeah. Feel free. Yeah, sometimes you need it. All right, cool. So let's talk about how to write SEO content. So the cool thing about content is that when you actually write really good content, you know, it brings people to your website, and then they begin to trust you, right? And you're increasing user experience. And honestly, this can really convert customers or fans. So just as an example, we have these freebies, I think, for like content promotion, or I'm sorry, event promotion, and people buy them and then they come back and they buy more, you know? So, and I think they're like $5. So that content that really isn't at the heart of what we do, again, helps them to trust us. So you don't have to do the same content all the time, but peripheral, you can focus on that too. All right, let's talk terminology here. So keywords, and this is the search terms people use to look for your company, right? Now, oftentimes keywords is focus key phrase. That's what I usually call it, focus key phrase. Because if someone says, you know, Jane, can you help me get to the front of Google with, you know, for shoes? And I'm like, hell no, I can't. Do you know who else you're competing with for shoes? You're competing with designer, you know, the designer shoe people, people who just make shoes for a living. Like that's all they do, you know? So that's a tough one. You know, your key phrase has to be targeted enough that people who need you can find you. It's okay if it weeds out people who aren't quite interested in you. And there are synonyms you can use as well. So here's some examples of that. So key phrases, web design Delaware, right? Then you have Delaware web design, or website designer Delaware. So you have all these synonyms and different key phrases. And if you see on the bottom of the presentation here, you see research keywords in Google Trends. What I love about these is you can pop in a keyword and it'll kind of give you other alternates and possibly even ones that are higher, that are better search terms. Other things to think about is, you know, you as an industry leader might know the words for things, but will your client know the words for things? So sometimes you do have to rewrite the terminology to focus on what your clients are looking for. What are they typing in? So just be aware of that. You might need to change your terminology. You can put yours in parentheses to show that, like, you know, you're with it. But those keywords must be present. And this is my golden rule. Are you ready? Take notes, guys. This is my golden rule. Whatever key phrase you want to be found for, there needs to be an entire page dedicated to it. Whatever key phrase you want to be found for, there needs to be an entire page dedicated to it. Now, the amount of words per page has definitely fluctuated over the years. Anywhere between 300 and 2,500. And that 2,500 is more like cornerstone content that is a blog article, very comprehensive, right? Whereas 300 pages might be more of a service page, and you just wouldn't put as much content on that. So yeah, so that's the secret to SEO, really. Page titles are really important as well. So notice they all have the keywords here in some capacity. It's better if it's consecutive, like exactly, but it doesn't have to be. Then you have the meta description, and that's this little paragraph under here. And that's what people read to just kind of get a quick synopsis of if your site's good for them or not. So that's the terminology, and those are the most important points. So let's talk about optimizing your content. Now, this is a snapshot of WordPress using Yoast. And when you install Yoast, there's a free version, you will get this layout here at the bottom of every page. Now, this is going to appear under Edit page, not under your website builder if you have one. So once you get there and scroll to the bottom, you can add your focus key phrase. And notice here, when we type best web design company, this comes up and it shows you what it looks like. And we got a green face. Why? Because we knocked out all of these. So good results. We linked internally. So linking from your pages to your other pages helps navigation, and Google gives you points for that. Key phrase distribution. You don't want to add it too much. You don't want to add it too little. And it definitely needs to be in certain areas on your page. Key phrase density. Oh, wait, blah, blah, blah. Okay, key phrase distribution, I apologize. What that means is that it's spread evenly throughout the website. So you don't just talk about it here and then never again down here. So you want to make sure that you're talking about it throughout your site. And then the key phrase density is how often it was found. You want to put that key phrase in the meta description. You want to put it in the page URL, making sure that's a part of it. Now, if it's your website homepage, obviously that becomes problematic because you can't quite do that. The title width, you don't want it to be too long, but it's not. The text length, this page happens to be over 800 key phrases, or I'm sorry, 800 words, and that's really good. Image alt attributes, we tag all the images and make sure that they at least contain some of the key phrases. And this key phrase has never been used before on our website. And the reason why that's relevant is because if you are optimizing for the same key phrase, you now have two pages competing for that position. Now, I don't honestly think that's a problem, but it could be. It depends. If I come up twice on one page, I'm okay with that, but it's possible they would Google would get mad about it. You can also do something that's a canonical SEO, which means, hey, I'm going to talk about this, but the real page with the SEO is on this page. You can kind of link your SEO to another page, and that kind of gets around that. It's a bit more complex, though. Yeah, so this is what we did well. Now, what could we improve on? The exact match of the focus key phrase appears in the SEO title, but not at the beginning. So what that means is we probably have choosing the best web design company. It wants to see web design company or best web design company right out front. But we didn't do that because that didn't make any sense and would kind of mislead people. So we took a hit on that one. Some more problems. We don't link enough outside. So what does that mean? It means we don't link to other resources. And Google likes it when you do, because that just shows, you're giving people good advice. They want the key phrase in the introduction, which we didn't. And again, a lot of that is based on how we design a page. And so maybe we have a banner that's not like all the information, but it still counts the first paragraph as the first paragraph. So we're kind of aware we break some rules sometimes due to decor. You should only have one H1 on a page. This is a strange bug, actually, because this appears a lot, even though there isn't another H1, but be aware of that. And yeah, so Yeah, it's interesting. I think it actually contradicts itself here, but this is the best one I know. And sometimes we have to make decisions where we don't follow these rules for whatever reason, but we didn't hit all the points, but again, certain points are worth more than others. So be careful with that. I'm actually going to answer Small Biz Philly's question because it's relevant. He says, doesn't Google punish keyword stuffing? They do. And that's why the length of your text determines how many times you can add the keyword. So if you have like, 3,000 words, but the key phrases are only 4 times, it's going to be like, is this really about this? So if you add it too many times, you'll see it as a penalty. So it does take that into account. It's like the right amount. Cool. Okay. So secondly, let's optimize our content, the images. So the size of the image is very important. You don't want it too big because again, bigger equals more file size, and that just means it'll load slower and yada, yada, yada. So make sure that you save your images 72 dpi. And I do provide image sizes in another slide, which I'll come back to, but the alt text, again, this shows up in screen readers for people with visual disabilities. So describe it in a way that makes sense while also adding the key phrase. Title should be shorter version of the alt text. Now, as far as how much this matters, I think they both do. I do kind of like to work them in sometimes. I usually will vary it a bit. So I have the key phrase in the alt text, but then I'll make the title maybe location based. So that can kind of pick up on that. So it'll see, Newark, Delaware, and, so there's different strategies you can do. But what I like about the title and the alt text is like, also I use it to search in my media library, right? So if you're having trouble finding your stuff, definitely start doing this as soon as you upload them so they can get those SEO benefits and you can find your images faster. File names, keep them short and relevant. The file names do matter in SEO. Okay, so we're going to talk about off-page SEO now. And this is trickier because it relies on other websites linking back to you. But there is a really good way of getting backlinks, and those are through directories. So now, whenever thing I didn't mention is that you should definitely have a Google page, a Google business page, and a Bing business page. And interestingly, that Bing now links to Google and kind of syncs your listing. But you'd be surprised how many people still use Bing. A lot of business owners. So if that's your jam, or you can just ignore it completely. It's up to you. But definitely having a verified Google page, because then they're going to give you preference in the search engines as well. Backlinks. So a backlink is when other people will link back to you. And you don't just want anyone linking back to you. Not just anyone. Because if they're like spammy, then that's not going to look so good in Google's eyes. So think of major directories. Yep, joining things like Yelp, Manta, I think is still around. Also, industry-specific directories for you. For example, if you're in the plastic industry, there's probably industrial websites directories that you can join, I'd imagine. And you can also write guest blogs for people and have them link to your site that way. There's all sorts of ways that you can get people to link to your site. Creating partnerships is definitely one of those ways. So these are valuable for SEO because they represent a vote of confidence from one site to another. Like a thumbs up. This site's cool, here they are. All right, so backlinks, here's a little bit more information about that. So yes, every website that links to you, it's called a backlink, and not every backlink is created equal. We talked a little bit about that. You can take a look at this. It's a Google Search Console. They will tell you the backlink sources of people linking back to, which can be helpful. Here are some ways you can make this happen. So you want to add your website to directories, and the more industry specific, the better. And honestly, You know, the directories that I add mine to, the ones that beat me in the search engine, you know, I'm like, how dare you, sir? I shall join you, you know, and that just, you know, helps you as well. Make sure you have a Google business page, set up all your social media accounts. So if you, Facebook, Snapchat, even if you're not using Snapchat, LinkedIn, all those, you know, TikTok, if you're not on TikTok, make an account, because all those linking to your site is super important because they have amazing authority. You could do a guest blog, put out press releases to social media. You got to make a story. You know, I don't think they care about like, you know, we launched a new website, yeah, you know, but like what makes the website special and kind of pitch them a story. And you can even try paid sponsorships. You know, pay people that will share your link to your stuff, such as like an influencer on LinkedIn. So there are ways to get your site out there. Organic search drives 53% of website traffic. Paid searches like Google AdWords only drives 27%. So people are lazy and they have ad blockers. So when you have an ad blocker, it hides all that stuff and they just go right to the organic searches. So I think that's makes a really big impact on why people prefer the organic search. All right, let's talk questions. Anonymous, do you recommend Yoast as an SEO plugin for WordPress? Do you think that it is the best one? I will say I'm team Yoast because I've committed to that tool and it's gotten me great results. So sometimes it's not necessarily about what tool you use, but that you're just using a tool. It's about, I think, $80 a year, maybe 60 if you're renewing an existing license. And I love it because if I like edit content, delete content, it'll automatically make redirects for me. It's really helpful in that sense. I personally like it, but I'm not going to condemn you if you decide to use a different platform. I will say if you want good results, just pay for the plugins. If nothing else, pay for your premium plugin. But I think there comes to be a point where like if you have a 10-page website, you might not need it. But if you have like 30, 50 pages, you definitely need a premium SEO plugin to just manage all of that and make sure you don't get any broken links and other issues. All right. All right. Any other questions? In the Q&A, please.
Yeah, quick one. Even as we still wait for one or two questions, just want to I just posted a 30-second survey about today's webinar. Remember, we at Tempo SPDC, we always cherish your feedbacks, even as it helps us, you know, in improving the services we provide to you guys at a no cost. And it is also required by our funders. So my wonderful attendees, please kindly take a 30-second and help us to kindly fill out the survey link I just posted.
Cool. Okay. Regina, is Yoast for Wix? If not, do you have any recommendations? So Wix isn't known for its SEO tools. They might have improved over the years, but you're kind of stuck using whatever platforms that they offer. So Yoast is only available for WordPress. It might have other things like Drupal, but I actually don't know, but definitely not Wix. Okay, so we don't have a whole lot of time, guys, but I want to tell you about, oh wait, we have more time than I thought. Okay, I can stop panicking now. I'm like, wait, I didn't get to the odd part. Okay, so next up, oh, hold on, I got more questions. If you guys, okay, I answered that. Anonymous, when you say add your website to directories, do you mean Google and Bing business pages? Going up a little bit here, you can see we talk about a lot of different ones here, but you know, Yelp, Yelp, Manta, Google business page, industry specific directories, woman-owned business directories. If you're a woman, you know, just try to think of, you know, certain directories that could be helpful. All your social media accounts. So check out this slide for examples of that. Okay, let's talk ads because Phil, you're going to love this one. Because even though I think websites can take like 4 to 6 weeks to get your SEO up there to see where it is, that's really for non-competitive industries. So you can take all the way for like 12 months really, or 6 months. So sometimes you have to do something in the meantime. So let's talk ads. Here's some things that you need to know. There are a ton of options, okay? Tons. Google, social media like Facebook ads, Amazon, etc. And the ad pricing varies in, different industries, the bids more, and how demanding it is makes it more expensive. And by bidding, what I mean by that is, when you're on a search engine, you see, these people here, right? Go back up. You see all these people. Well, they're probably paying more than this person, who's paying more than this person. And if a bunch of people want this position, it could be like, 80 cents a click or something to get here. Who knows? Or even more than that. And you can also test different ads, A/B testing. So let's say you try this title and you're not getting many hits, but you try something else and that's performing better, so you switch to that one. So definitely doing A/B testing right out of the gate can really help you long term. Okay, so here's just some examples of how you can use an ad to target. And again, this is it's different for whatever platform you're on, but I'm going to focus on Google for the moment. So this is the important step, that you have to research your audience and the key phrases. Like, what are they typing? Know who they are and what they're typing. And again, you can do that in the keyword planning phase. I have an additional slide. And consider using a platform that lets you target their interests and not just their age and gender. All right, so let's talk goals. There's two big ones. There is pay-per-click, which means you only get charged when someone clicks on your ad, and that's usually higher than, well, then there's also pay per, oh gosh, what's the word? Come on, Phil, help me out. What is that word? Impression. There we go, nailed it. Pay for impression, which means if you're even shown, they're going to bill you, but it's going to be significantly less than if they clicked on it. Pay per conversion, this is when you pay every time someone actually takes the action on your website. This is optimal, but it can be pretty expensive. But I guess it depends on what you're selling, right, guys? Let's talk how to make a successful ad, right? So you want to consider different formats, because you have mobile, you have desktop, and you would be surprised how often video or slideshow might outperform still images, but it could be totally different from your industry. I mean, you go in thinking one thing, and then you actually look at the data and you're shocked that, like just an image was doing better than a video. And you're like, why is that, So less text on images, because Google will block you. So this is actually a big no-no. Well, this is actually sharing a post, so that's fine, but you want way less text on it. And people like to look at faces, surprisingly. I thought that was interesting. And again, A/B test that stuff. See what's sticking. Different headlines. All right, so SEO results can take between like 6 weeks and 12 months. Now, if you're an existing site already built up, that's going to be closer to 6 weeks, depending on where you're already at. But I had one client go from in just 1 month, go from 86 all the way up to number 3. So it really just depends on what your competitors are doing as well. All right, so now what? We got some stuff for you. So you can get the target audience template worksheet, and this asks you the hard questions of who is searching for your site, what do they want, what are their challenges, and this way you can build the best experience for them. Then we have a worksheet where you can map out your pages and your purpose. And again, this just really helps you get down there, because again, whatever key phrase you're going to be found for should have a whole page dedicated to it. So this is cool. There's also a service formula we provide you too. So, all right, that is it. We do have some resources and links here because you will get the presentation, but ultimately we can have questions for the rest of the meeting. Oh, already got some. Okay, answered that one already. Perla, I believe Google only allows business pages if you add a physical address. Is there a way to have a Google business page if your business is online only? For the longest time, I don't think you need you can publish your address, but you can hide it. So they'll know where your physical location is, but you don't have to publish it online. It will be hidden for you. There's an option for that. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, you can also use post box, like a PO box. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I will just give additional 2 or 3 minutes to see if more questions will come up before we wrap it up for the day. But I will just go ahead to post the 30-second survey again for the 3rd time. Please, for those of you that didn't see it for the first time and the 2nd time, I just posted it again. Like I said a few minutes ago, we always cherish your feedbacks, even as it helps us in improving the services we provide to you guys at a low cost.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so Karen asked, what is A/B testing? A/B testing is a way to tell which ad is doing better than another. So it could be something as different as changing the colors or changing the layout or changing the copy. And then you see which one performs better, and that's the one you start using. So you could have several different variations before you figure out which one you want to stick with and which one's performing well. Okay, Marjorie, how to learn about making my site compliant with ADA and HIPAA? Well, having an SSL is very important for HIPAA. Now HDA is interesting because there isn't actually something that will say it is compliant. There's like levels of compliancy. There are free plugins you can get that will make your site ADA compliant by just offering like a little thing people can click on that will make the font bigger or change the colors for them to make it easier for to read. So that's a really quick way. Otherwise, if you're taking personal information over the internet, you just want to make sure that SSL is installed, and so that data is traveling securely. They will also have probably a list of compliance they need to follow, I imagine. Regina asked, should the Google profile be registered before you get a website? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You can do it. In fact, I think Google is actually offering like one-page websites now. So that's a really, really quick and dirty way to at least get people more information while you're in the middle of designing our website. Okay, I think I answered that. Is there anything extra for HIPAA? Again, that depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It's not like you pay HIPAA anything, but you just have to make sure your website's secure. There are free SSLs available on certain hosting packages. You might want to increase your SSL because of the sensitivity of the data, but I would go back to the HIPAA compliance and see what they require, and then go from there. All right, guys, if you have any more questions, you are welcome to contact me. I'm Jane Clark from BrandSwan. You can email me here. And thank you, Garba, so much for inviting me to do this awesome presentation. I mean, I'm biased, I guess I did it, but I'm just really passionate about this project, and I think it's cool that you guys are here.
Thank you so much. Before we wrap it up, I just want to use this opportunity to also thank each and every one of you guys for keeping it a day with us. Jane, thank you for a wonderful presentation. And of course, this also goes to my wonderful Temple SPDC colleague. Without them, we wouldn't have been here. And I bet you the webinars wouldn't have even come into existence. Thank you guys for your wonderful cooperation. Thank you guys for your time, and do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.